here today with the National Outdoor Learning Initiative and Green Schoolyards America in the community of practice for schools and districts moving learning outside. And the National Outdoor Learning Initiative, for those who are joining us for the first time today, was founded in June 2020 by Green Schoolyards America, the Lawrence Hall of Science, San Mateo County Office of Education, and 10 Strands. And it grew to include around 30 organizations and several hundred people collaborating to put materials together to help schools and districts go outside during the pandemic. And this community of practice has been meeting since then. This is our meeting number 42, and we welcome people to join us at each meeting and to come in and out as you have time to meet colleagues around the country who are doing work related to outdoor learning and schoolyard greening. We meet every other Tuesday. The forum is currently hosted by myself, Sharon Danks from Green Schoolyards America, and my colleague, McKenna. Without further ado, I would like to hand the mic over to Lauren, who will introduce our speakers for today. Thank you so much for coming. Lauren?
Thank you, Sharon. So we want to welcome several guests from the great state of Maine. They've seen a lot of momentum in public education there in the state of Maine, embracing outdoor learning as an innovation in education during the pandemic and beyond. Olivia Griset, Fong, and Sommo of the Maine Environmental Education Association, along with Martin Mackey of the Maine Department of Education, will share guidance documents, a new online outdoor learning portal, a new grant program for teachers, new teacher training, policy work, and work at their Department of Education. And they'll also share how all of these wonderful things together have accelerated and supported outdoor learning advancement in public education as a statewide strategy. So without further ado, welcome all of you, and I'll let Olivia et al. Take it away.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Lauren and Sharon, for having us here today. We're really excited to share about the work we're doing in Maine and to meet you all and to be inspired also in small group discussion with the work that you're doing. I think it's really important that we learn from each other and share as we're like building momentum in this work all across the United States. I'm going to introduce myself and then have the team introduce themselves, and then we'll kind of dive into our story and share some of the hopefully like innovative ideas that maybe folks can pursue in other states around the United States. So Red, you can go to the next slide. My name's Olivia. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the executive director at the Maine Environmental Education Association, and Maine Environmental Ed is the statewide affiliate with the North American Association for Environmental Ed. So we also are part of this really vibrant and amazing national network of different states around the country that work to advance and support environmental education at the national level, at the continental level, at the global level, and also in our own states. And we're really committed at Maine Environmental Ed to center equity in our work in both the ways in which we're doing work in community and also in our own organization and in our network, and then also in the way that we're prioritizing strategy as well, and really thinking about what are the levers that we need to push together at the state level, at the local level, in individual schools and organizations in concert to ensure that every single Mainer has access to really powerful outdoor learning opportunities, both in their pre-K through 12 education, college, beyond. So we have like a really ambitious vision for our state, and we also believe that it's a human right to have this opportunity, and we're really not opportunity to have access, true access to nature and to outdoor learning and to sense of place. And we're really, really passionate about pursuing that. So I will turn it over to my amazing colleague, Red, to introduce themselves.
Everyone. Thanks so much for being here today. Super excited to present some of the stuff that we've been doing. My name is Red. I use they, them pronouns. I am currently based in Pawtucket territory in what is now known as Massachusetts. And I run our mini grants program that I will be showing you all a little bit more about. And I will pass it over to Anna to introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Anna Sommo, and I am based out of Portland, unceded Wabanaki territory, and I have recently joined the staff as the Director of School and Community Partnerships.
Hi, my name is Martin Mackey. I am the director of the Rethinking Responsive Education Ventures program, which is funded by a $17 million federal grant, which was applied for by the visionary leadership at the Maine Department of Education to support some of the initiatives and maintain the momentum that came out of the pivot in March of 2022 or 2020, which seems ridiculous that it wasn't longer ago than that, but I guess it was just 2 years ago. And so we are looking at rethinking the way that we deliver education in a remote setting. Remote is defined as outdoor ed, online learning, multiple pathways, and yet to be imagined. So this has been a really great opportunity to kind of explore the great things that are happening in Maine, celebrate those, and figure out ways to elevate those and share those. And I just want to add to what Olivia said is we are so proud of the work that we're doing in Maine, and it's really important work, and we're lucky enough to be a small enough state where we all know each other. So it's pretty easy to get stuff done, and we're really excited to be able to share the progress that we have made with you guys, because it's nothing short of audacious. And we will continue to be audacious because we have been so successful so far. So thank you.
Thanks so much, Martin. Yeah, so today we're here to talk a little bit about our work and how it's really created innovation in public education, both through the pandemic and also we're hoping, I mean, I don't know what's happening with the pandemic, but it's continuing on in its boldness and beyond. And so you can go to the next slide, please, Red. So I'm going to talk a little bit about early pandemic, and then focus a little bit more on kind of like where we are at now. But I did want to mention that early in the pandemic at Maine Environmental Ed, we work both with the affiliate network, like I mentioned, with North American Association. We did a lot of work early on in the pandemic with that group, thinking about guidance and creating guidance documents that schools could look at to better understand how they could spend their federal funding to support their pivot to outdoor learning. And those guidance documents are available online. And we also kind of created our own for our state. And then over with Green Schoolyards America in Maine, we were also involved in your amazing online portal work. I worked on some of the policy pages and have been following and stayed a part of that huge momentum and some of the research and analysis of the impacts on the field as well. So we've been connected into some of the national momentum. And then at the state level, we're a statewide network, but we also work with other networks. One of the key networks that we've created in the last few years in Maine is called the Nature-Based Education Consortium, and it's kind of our network of networks. And in that group, I wanted to share this because I think it is extremely unique in the United States. We have built something called the Local Outdoor Learning Advocacy Working Group, and it's a working group that really thinks about a lot of the work we do at NEBEC is thinking about systems change at the state level, like at the legislature and working with our government agencies. But we also are a local control state, and we recognize that actually tons of power and decision-making in public education in the states that are local control, which is a significant number of us across the United States, happens at the municipal level, in superintendents and in school boards. So we're working really hard to build strategy and build tools to advocate for outdoor learning so that this type of education is being supported and written into local budgets, school district budgets, and superintendents understand the value and see it as like a really interdisciplinary and exciting, innovative strategy for health and well-being and environmental literacy and all sorts of benefits. So I wanted to just put that out here because a lot of the work I'm going to share actually happened at this working group with a bunch of organizations. And so like we are coming as Mia presenting, but we're also representing the work of so many organizations and folks across our state who are amazing. So I just wanted to shout that out. So you can go to the next slide, Red, please. So some of the stuff that we did, we created pretty early on, we created an outdoor learning portal for schools and districts in our state. And I think this was a really, really critical thing that we moved on really quite rapidly in the pandemic. You can, I think Red will share a link to the Nature-Based Ed Consortium site. You can go and check this out. It's pretty cool and we're still adding to it. But it has like all the guidance documents. We cultivated a really curated training, like professional development, especially in the early pandemic when there was a lot of training coming out from all across the country, ways that schools could use their funding or get funding. And we also started to study the impacts or like the pivots in the first year and wrote case studies that are Maine oriented around how schools across Maine in different communities were navigating outdoor learning or implementing outdoor learning, which I think really mattered. There was a lot of case studies at the national level, but I think having them from different parts of the state, from different school sizes, was really helpful for people to see, like, how do I actually bring this into reality? And those case studies are pretty interesting and pretty detailed, so you might get some good ideas by checking those out. And we also kind of cultivated, like, how do you assess your school property? How do you community, understand who can help you in your community? And we kind of curated it all together. And I think that was a really useful tool for schools to have something that was specific to our locality in our state. And you can go to the next slide, Red, please. The other thing that we're still doing, and I think is a huge, this just worked really well, is we host statewide forums for outdoor learning. And we've hosted 2 in the pandemic, and we're working on our 3rd one for spring. And they're extremely well attended. In our forums, we had 200 to 300 people come, lots of folks in school leaderships, teachers, community organizations, and we co-host them with the Department of Education. Each one of them has been co-hosted with DOE, which is really, really powerful in our messaging regarding like our commitment, I think, both at the department level and across the state to bring, outdoor learning, really normalizing it in public education. The first one we did before the pandemic, before we went back to school, and Maine pretty much went back to school. I know some states didn't, but we went back to school that next school year. And Red, you can go to the next slide. One of the cool things we did was in our first forum, we were thinking about how do we actually think outside the box? How do we get an extra day of kids at school by getting kids off site and doing school at community partner organizations, which is really, really a neat pivot. And a lot of schools did take this on, even though it's a really big innovation for schools to imagine this. So you can go to the next slide, Red. So we worked with our Summer Camps Association, and we did a huge assessment of all of our camps and what they could offer schools near them. And then, we helped connect and partner, and there were a whole bunch of places that did take this, there are a bunch of school districts that did do this with different groups of kids rotating different days, or also there are some really cool stories of community partners working in local parks or things like that and bringing kids through. So we have a lot of different models of outside the box innovation where, yes, outdoor learning was happening on schools just on their own property. That was our biggest uptake, but then some really cool partnerships emerging to move kids off site for parts of the day and get more kids spread out. And a lot of schools we've talked to, it's so successful, they want to keep doing it because of the social emotional impacts that have been so beneficial to have them in these alternative environments or with other types of community partner support. So you can go to the next slide. And I'm not going to go too into detail about the Portland Public Schools outdoor learning. There's people here, I think I saw on the call that are actually, and I think there was another call that just focused on Portland, but this is our largest district in the state. And they have really committed to pursuing outdoor learning both now and hopefully into the future, thinking about environmental literacy, which is so exciting. And if you want to learn more or really look at a district who's done stuff across all of their schools and now has in their school budget an outdoor learning coordinator position funded through their budget, not through external funding, then you should check out the Portland Public Schools story and I'm sure they would be happy to talk with you too, because they're doing really, really amazing stuff at a district-wide level. Yeah, yay, Katie's here. She's the Portland Outdoor Learning Coordinator, and she's amazing. And talk to Katie, because I think they're really pushing the envelope to see what you can do in a large urban district. All right, you can continue. The other thing, I'm trying to share like different levers that we're pushing at the same time to march towards like more systemic change. I would be remiss if I didn't mention our work with the Environmental Funders Network, because this has been huge for us too in Maine, to have a local funders network that's really committed to kind of doing some collaborative funding or collaborative learning about issues. But it's made up of, different family foundations, and it's private philanthropy. And they had never really been investing. Some of the groups within EFN had been investing in outdoor learning or environmental ed on their own. But during this time, we worked together with them to share more about nature-based education and investing in outdoor learning, what that can do for our state. And the Environmental Funders Network really leaned in during COVID to start to fund. They funded the outdoor learning portal like really quickly to think about how do we start to infuse local philanthropy, matching that with, this influx of federal money coming in, so that we can really mobilize and maximize our resources and not take forever to kind of like react and work towards COVID response. So that's been incredibly helpful. You can go to the next slide, Red. And I guess Red is actually going to do the next section, right? Talking about one thing that EFN helped us launch.
Yeah, so some of those relationships with EFN helped us fund this new program that we call the Mini Grants for Outdoor Learning Program. And so through a series of relationships and gifts from funders, we were able to distribute funding at the last fall, so during the fall of 2020. So we ran our first round of grants, and then we ran another one in the spring, and then we were able to do another one starting at this fall. And through those 3 rounds, we were able to fund in all 16 counties of Maine, and you can kind of see that distribution of where the funding went, particularly this year. And obviously, like, Cumberland is one of our largest counties, so it is one of the most highly funded. And we're able to fund 309 teachers. We received way more applications than we could fund. We ended up distributing over $350,000, which was really amazing. When I was running these calculations and prep for this meeting, I was like, wow, I didn't realize we had pushed that much money out the door. And we also ended up reaching 41,000 students. And it was pretty incredible to think about like the impact of what one $1,500 grant would do for a teacher of a classroom of 25, or for like an educator, or for some guidance counselors that work with students, and how many students they could reach. And so like having that number of over 41,000 students was pretty incredible to think about. And here's just an example of how widespread it was. This year was a great movement for us. To start to fund up in the county is what we call it, up in Aroostook County, where we don't have a ton of relationships. We're starting to move northward, but a lot of the stuff has been kind of more focused along the coast as well. But yeah, this is a distribution of all the different grants that we were able to fund across the state. As I note that the reds are the ones that we funded last year, and the blue is the ones that we're able to get in touch with this year. And another great outcome from this program was the support they were able to provide teachers. It's particularly in the way that we were able to communicate about their projects. What we've been finding is that, teachers don't always have the most time to do this extra work, to talk about their work on some more public forums. So what I was able to contribute was connecting these teachers and the stories about these teachers to some of our local press outlets. And we ended up distributing like 17 different press releases and some TV features throughout the past 2 years that we've been able to run these grants. And the traction and kind of visibility that this program was getting, and the work that these teachers were doing, really helped contribute as well to some of the funders that were able to see, like, yes, these grants are really making an impact, and the community really does appreciate it. So you can check all of those out on our website as well. Yeah, I think I'm going to hand it back over to you, Olivia.
Thanks. And Red did an amazing job very quickly building a whole new statewide grant program that didn't exist. So if you want to do something similar, we'd be more than happy to meet with you one-on-one and share all of our structures, share our application, anything like that, if that's helpful to get a similar type of program at any scale launched in your own state. Another really exciting thing that we've been working on is a project called Teach Me Outside, and Teach Me Outside is a collaboration between us and a couple other networks in Maine. I'm going to try to speed up a little because this stuff's exciting, so I can talk too long. Red, you can go to the next slide. Through this program, we've done a ton of work, honestly, and I don't have time to go through it all, involving a lot of research and evaluation and shared communications. But one of the things I'm really excited about is, and you can access all these things on the website, but there is a new module that we've built through the pandemic with Maine teachers called Teaching Outside 101, and they've created this whole like open source training. And the goal of it is it's a train the trainer design where a teacher in a school who's really excited about outdoor learning or has some skill could then teach other teachers in their school or on their team, like to help them build their skills so they feel more comfortable doing outdoor learning. And so we've started our new training. We've started training on this module this fall and have like completely sold out all of our trainings. Like people are really excited about it. And we can share with you, you can send me an email right now. I don't think it's published yet. It will be by April, but we can share with you this module if it's something that maybe you could use in your own state. And we're working on a new one for 2022. And I'm going to pass it over to Martin to share a little bit about at the same time. Yeah, you can find all the tools over there, which is, we have a lot of really cool tools that we've built, online tools. I'm going to let Martin talk or else we're going to run out of time to share a little bit about what's happening at Department of Ed.
Okay, thank you so much, Olivia. I appreciate that. And it's so exciting to hear other people talk about the stuff we're doing in Maine because it really is so exciting and it's great. It's also local that it's easy to see it in action. So the REV project stands for Rethinking Responsive Education Ventures. And we have an associate web platform called Engine, which is in development, and I would love to share with you because there'll be some tools on there for all of us to be able to use to both learn more and also to collaborate on projects together. And that'll be open up to everybody who is interested in creating things together in a collaborative space that is really focused around outdoor ed. So I'll share that with you once it's up and running. It's not there yet, so right now it's just kind of like a unicorn that we're spending a lot of time talking about. That being said, REV is up. REV is up and running, and REV has already awarded over $1 million to support outdoor ed programs in the state of Maine. As I said earlier, REV is really about creating innovative opportunities for Maine educators to create something that's significantly or structurally, like fundamentally different than what is traditionally happening. REV is designed to, the process is educators will enroll in the REV program. They go through a course really focused on human-centered design using the design thinking process to develop a pilot program that is eligible for a funding of up to $250,000. So I was speaking to someone today, kind of trying to sell my program that I'm giving away for free. You still have to sell it in an era like this. We all know things are so tight that it's difficult to find time for these things. So the way that I envision it is you walk into the REV machine as kind of a haggard teacher with a lot of things on your plate, and you come out the other side with a suitcase full of dollars and a blueprint in your hand on how to create and implement a outdoor education program. In addition to that, we have some coaches that help support the implementation process, and so they kind of coach you and they walk you through in the different stages of implementation. The goal, really the overall goal of REV isn't strictly focused on outdoor ed. It's focused on innovative practices. It's focused on creating online programs for kids. It's focused on building outdoor classrooms and outdoor programs that are beyond just kids sitting on a tree stump doing math. They really incorporate all of those aspects that we know are so fundamental to outdoor ed programs being robust and sustainable. So again, we've given over $1 million to support programs, and we're excited that we have 2 more years of funding funding. And so we have upwards of several $1 million in waiting to give to programs that are interested in supporting and developing programs. Red, can you advance the slide? So Rev's ultimate goal is to have a systemic impact on innovation. So right now we have over 38 districts participating with 111 educators. The classroom impact is, direct impact in the classroom is 2,220 students with the potential impact for over 50,000. So when you take a class, we are really focused on not just teaching you the techniques of creating an outdoor ed program, but really focusing on how do you create systemic, lasting change in your program? How do you advocate for change? It's not just advocating for your program, it's advocating for new and unique approaches to education. How do we work with you so that you can work with your administrators and your school boards and your community partners and your teachers and most of all, your students to create these programs and these lasting impacts? The beauty of Maine is that we all are very, we're all proximity pretty close to each other for the most part. And we also there's a lot of resources that are shared and a lot of common vision. There's a collective vision in Maine to really support this kind of learning. And it's because of the advocacy of the people that are on this call that have really fostered that culture of innovation and that culture of embracing outdoor ed. We're super excited about the work we're doing and have nothing but optimism and hope for our audacious future. We have a lot of really good things going, and I think that there's a lot of potential for collaboration. The last thing I'm going to talk about is just really quickly is Olivia and Red and their team. We're working with them to create. It's still very much in a pilot. It's still piloty. It's not even, doesn't even have a pilot yet, but we are creating opportunities for what we're calling an accelerator program. So Olivia and her team has a ton of really great projects that have already been started. We're working on figuring out a way to utilize the design thinking process to create a short-term series of sessions that people can go and tweak or refine or iterate on some of those existing programs that are already out there, figuring out a way to make that native for your school, and then applying for a significant grant of several tens of thousands of dollars to implement and support that. So those are the things that we're doing in Maine. We're moving very quickly and we're moving in lots of directions, but it's exciting and there's lots of opportunities. And the collaboration, I always say that Maine, our summer camp in Maine is sort of a gateway to Maine. There are so many people, there's probably people on this call that got to know Maine from coming here in summer camp. Why we have to capitalize on those resources, use the infrastructure that's already established to get people in Maine and to celebrate the great things that Maine is doing. So really excited and definitely encourage folks to check out the Rev site, and I will share the Engine online platform once that is a tool, but ultimately it's going to be a space where there's some whiteboarding, there's all sorts of things, and all of the conversations that we're having can happen in one place so that you're not having to trace down different emails about that wonderful conversation you had with a group of people. They all happen in one place and they're, it's in a collective, so that you don't have to track things down, and then other people can watch and see what's happening and iterate on those conversations. So really excited to be able to share this stuff, and I appreciate all the hard work that you guys are doing.
Thanks so much, Mark. Yeah, I think that's our time. So I'm just going to pass it back to Lauren. We didn't quite finish, but I think that's great. You got a taste, and we'll share our slides and you can kind of reach out if there's anything you want to learn more about.
Awesome. Thank you so much, all of you. I can tell that there is so much more that you wanted to share, including the conversation that Olivia and I had prior to this. There are so many wonderful examples of how you've been implementing this innovative thinking in your state. So we're going to have a brief Q&A time. So if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. Probably about 8 to 10 minutes of Q&A. We already have a couple questions, and drop in your thanks for the Maine team. We have a question from Emily. She says, we have been trying to get the innovative off-campus model with partners going in Washington, D.C., but don't have the right support from district leaders. They've been mostly focused on equipment procurement. How did Portland, Maine, or state of Maine get robust buy-in at the government level?
I think that, I guess the government level is kind of like different. There's different levels of buy-in. Like, I do think we have been working pretty hard with Department of Ed for some years, and we have really amazing leadership right now, which is really helpful. That helps at the state level. I think at the local level, because we are local control, it's much more hit or miss, I guess, depending on who is in leadership. But we do have certain superintendents who are extreme champions of this type of innovation, and they will speak to others. So there is a group right now that's organizing in Maine, that's superintendents and principals who are really committed to outdoor learning. And that group is meeting with each other, and they're sharing stories, and their conversations are really different than what teachers are, the barriers for teachers. It's like a very different lens that they're navigating. And so those folks will also talk to other folks. And I think there's some it builds momentum that way, to have the messenger from, if you're a superintendent and you have another superintendent talk to you about how you're doing it. So there would be some, at the national level, I think there would be some really cool superintendents and principals in Maine that could potentially talk to others in other states about like their strategy and how they're doing it. In Portland, I think it is about leadership, but probably Katie West, who isn't presenting, but it works in that district, would be who I would reach out to talk about that story in more depth about leadership and how they are really investing in it. And I can say, though, local advocacy is huge. Like, having parents turn out, having the outward pressure for it is actually really important. So community organizing around local advocacy is really, really important for seeing it normalized in schools. I don't know if other folks have answer to that.
I agree with you entirely. I think local control makes such a huge difference, and we could never have an administration that would support local control as much as our current administration. So I think we're really lucky to know the native needs for the specific groups that are trying to implement change, and I think fierce advocacy is a really important part of it. And so I think, Katie, if you have, I know you're on this call as well, but you certainly are an expert as well. If you have something to add to this, I think we would be love to hear from you.
Well, I'm happy just to, I'm in my car office today. I'm happy just to weigh in and say, to echo what everyone else is saying, of that there's something about the way Maine is, that there's support in Portland, and there's parent support, community support, administrative support, but we also have a network throughout the state. So the community keeps building on itself. And so I would say, as much as you can keep building that within your local region or your state, it'll really benefit your endeavor.
For questions, maybe this is just a quick link in the chat. Is the Teaching Outside 101 curriculum available online? So maybe dropping in a contact or a link again for that. Sharon, oh, sorry, go ahead, Olivia.
It's not publicly live yet, but you can also email me if you want it, and I could share it with you. We just haven't published it fully, but it's like in pilot and teachers are using it. So it'll be totally published live in April.
Wonderful. Yeah, and so if you want to drop your contact in the chat, that would be great. A question from Sharon for Martin. She says, I'm wondering if you can tell us a bit more about the pilots. Can you describe what one or two of the programs are doing outdoors that was not happening previously?
Yeah, absolutely. So I will talk about a couple of different pilots. There's so many, but I'll talk about a high school pilot and then an elementary school pilot. So a high school pilot is happening in Western Maine, and there a lot of the legacy industries in Western Maine are around the outdoor industry. So a guiding forestry, not resource extraction as in mining, but like some of the more cottage industry, things like that. So some educators at a high school, in collaboration with their community, with their technical school, have created sort of a legacy outdoor ed satellite campus, which is located not too far from campus, but it's in the woods. It's a yurt, and a cohort of students go through that program in collaboration with the high school. So their CTE program is essentially delivered in a yurt out in the woods. I just lost power, but you can still hear me. So they're delivering the education out in the woods in a satellite yurt, and they're really focused on outdoor ed, getting the Maine guides license, learning more about those legacy industries. And so they're graduating from more of a comprehensive school that gets all their core credits, as well as some of those native legacy industry type things like guiding and resource management, things like that. So that's one example, and that's happening at the high school level. And there's a lot of collaboration with Maine and those educators. And it's a pretty exciting opportunity for some of those students who we know are going to be sticking around the community to have some really viable long-term jobs with some enhanced skills to bring out right when they're 18. And then there's an elementary school that's happening in a vastly different part of the state that's really taking a giant leap in incorporating outdoor ed into every one of their classrooms. They've realigned their curriculum. They've realigned their actual physical space. So there's an expectation that every kid is outside for a significant amount of the day beyond just recess. And that's another program that is wildly successful. Both of the success of these programs is really driven from the passion and the enthusiasm of the educators that took the course and then are now implementing them. As we move into the next iteration of potentially funded funded awards, we're seeing a lot more programs similar to this. Some of the guide model is being replicated other places, as well as just really aligning the curriculum to outdoor ed beyond just having kids sit outside to do their normal curriculum. So it's exciting, and I think it's really promising. The other thing is there's some different couple of programs that are working with the marine industry. So doing some marine farming, things along those lines. So incorporating outdoor ed in conjunction with resource management, in conjunction with like some CTE programs. So those kids are outside, they're learning, they're getting internships, they're working with colleges, and they're also doing a lot of those activities while they are outside working in the environment. Thank you.
Awesome. That's amazing. Wow. And especially at the high school level, we'd love to hear from anyone more about high schools. We have one last question. Well, two more questions. One is for you, Martin, really quickly. Are you the EE coordinator for the Department of Ed, or is there someone else or a specific person?
That's not my specific job description, although it falls under several people. I think that in Maine, we have the latitude to really work with some of the experts like Olivia and her team, so that we do not have one specific EE coordinator, but I know that the highest levels of administration, this is on their minds, and they're having conversations with folks who are guiding that. And I think so, at least based on my conversations. Olivia, would you agree with that you have the ear to the commissioner and in the cabinet level office?
Yeah, there's not an appointed person, but it's kind of multiple people across different departments, I think, that we're working with.
One of the things we have that's pretty unique to Maine is we also have an Office of Innovation, which is embedded in the Department of Ed, and things like this are really falling on the Office of Innovation, which I'm a part of.
So we'll have one more question before we pop into brief breakout groups, and they're the last two questions are sort of interwoven. Teresa was asking about, Maine is pretty cold. Do they have an outdoorsy culture in general? But Emily also asked about building capacity for more robust outdoor learning projects that are more than just like a field trip or school gardening. So I'm wondering how those intersect, the culture of outdoors in Maine and sort of innovative outdoor learning.
Yeah, I can respond and then see if anyone else wants to chime in too, if that's okay. I think that in our research, and we've done quite a bit of extensive studying of the fields in the state, which is also really powerful. community partnership is critical in moving this work from those like field trips or like having robust, like multiple community partners working in schools with schools over periods of time. It is one of the keys to, I think, like having really robust programming, if that makes sense. And that's just like a really critical thing. And there's a lot of elements to it, but I think community partnership is huge. And then also just like these networks of support and like funding to get the gear you need, or like taking down the barriers for educators, like just taking down the barriers, like so much commitment to reducing barriers, then it becomes like doable. I think, I used to be a teacher and some things I wanted to do weren't actually doable for different reasons. So what can we do to take down these barriers? And I think that's really critical. And then, yeah, we have an outdoorsy culture, but our kids aren't getting outside. Like we stay within that same national trend, right? Of we are the most rural state in the United States, but like our kids aren't going outside either very much. And then we have a lot of different things, like there's environmental racism that we're dealing with. There's all sorts of things that, just because we have an outdoorsy culture, I think it does help a bit, but I think we're facing with children, like very similar trends to where other people are facing. And so I think that there are some things that we can move forward because like there's a precedent or things like that, or a history of it, or there's maybe cultural, there's like a lot of outdoor based economy things. Yes. But I think we still are facing a lot of barriers around getting kids outside, even with that. I don't know if I'm expressing that accurately, but I don't know if other people are feeling that too. There's a lot of assumptions just because you have woods near you that you're in them. And we're not seeing that necessarily. I think we still need to be really intentional about how do we lovingly create spaces for people to be outside that feel safe and culturally relevant and all those things for our kids. Yeah.
One of the things I've noticed recently in Maine that I thought was outstanding is that there's a local library where you can check out outdoor gear. Like you can check out a book, but you can also check out a canoe. And I think that is a trend that I would love to see happening nationally. And it's pretty cool. So I'm telling you all that so that you can inspire your local librarians to become guide outfitters as well.
So thank you so much, Olivia, Martin, Red, and Anna, so much.
I just wanted to say thank you all for coming today. Thank you so much to all of our fabulous speakers. We really appreciate the presentation.